Thank you for having me here. I think I was thinking about coming here and talk about some numbers about what we do in Airbus. I could cite, however million parts we get every day and how many aircraft we deliver every year. We are in a very interesting situation in the company. We're one of the few industries in which we cannot make more aircraft. Whereas the auto manufacturing industry can make, collectively 100 million cars every year, we make 2,000 aircraft, combined Airbus and Boeing, give or take, including Embraer, I guess. And the solution is not to duplicate the production lines. We just don't have enough space to create more hangars, even though we do hold a significant amount of land with, on every single site that we have. The solution clearly has to be, we need to be better at optimizing our processes and bringing automation into the fold. We also have not been very good at this over, historically. Part of the reason is because we're still making one product that was designed over 30 years ago. We just delivered, I think it's 8,000 to 9,000 aircraft for A320, which is the plane that makes the profit for us. And we have a backlog of another 500 billion euros on that. So we have to deliver another 9,000 of those. So as we move into the future, how is this going to happen? And this is the conundrum that our leadership is looking at after right now. But today I learned, as we were getting all our induction into wheelbarrows, that the wheelbarrow industry, even though a much smaller business compared to ours, faces the same issues. Fear of failure, displacement of jobs, not knowing what's happening outside of our industries, et cetera, et cetera. So I do feel like we don't face the same problems, even though we have a very different scopes. And it would be interesting to hear here, to discuss here, how that influences what we do moving into the future. So I think that we all have the same different circumstances for everybody's different situations, but we do face the same problems, especially with what we were discussing in the previous session, upskilling people and making sure that we have the people to back up the production rates that we need to hit in all our industries. So that's what I'm here to discuss about.
Excellent, thank you, Marco. So from wheelbarrows to airframes, still face common problems. Okay, so Roger, from your perspective.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm guessing this is a nice audience because everybody wants the same thing for robots and automation. I guess I'm here more from the integrators and equipment suppliers rather than within a large company, although I have worked in large companies in robots and automation. I think the two things in my head that keep coming through which are really good for our sector in terms of progressiveness is commitment. Commitment to actually do something. I see quite often a reluctance, and it's not usually the champion that you're working with, it's somebody else within the organisation that's holding things back. I think sometimes, particularly in the UK, there is a commitment issue to driving things forward. The other element is I've been lucky, it's been a great career, but I've done a lot of firsts, leading edge stuff. And then you always come across black swans, as I call them, unknowns, things that come out during the project that you never envisaged. And then it's how you manage that, but still take the risk to do it. We are starting to go through a scale-up process. I think we've been hugely helped by Innovate UK these last 4 or 5 years. So there is government commitment to our sector. But when we're looking to sell the products, overwhelmingly all our opportunities are in the USA. There's almost nothing in the UK, and we're starting to see some seeds in Europe. But that comes back to my first point in terms of commitment. We all know the problems, and as Marco says, it's not confined to aerospace. Skill shortages everywhere. but it's actually that commitment to actually go ahead and do something about it. I think it's interesting as well, sort of parting thought. If this was 20 years ago, everybody on this panel would be automotive, and now they're all aerospace, which kind of shows what's happened in the Midlands with automotive. And we're going through a new challenge with the Chinese, where they've already done the EV market, and they're coming after the aerospace market next. So, it's not something that we can keep putting off. We do have great people, great processes. We just need to get on with it.
Okay, Roger, thank you. So, Andy, from your perspective.
Yeah, so hi. I guess in terms of the lessons that I've kind of learned over the last decade or so, starting life in the world of metrology and applied metrology, I visited a number of different industries, and there was one thing that kept on happening again and again and again, is I saw all these designs coming out from the design department, and they were kind of just being chucked over the wall. And then it was kind of like, make this. And there wasn't that feedback loop in terms of how do you do that. So within the world of metrology, it was all around where are datums positioned, what features are there that are measurable. And it was almost an impossible ask when by the time it got down to the manufacturing, it was how do you make this? And you can go back to design and say, what was your intent behind it? And we saw this again and again through many industries. That's kind of what led me on to the PhD that I did on design for verification, is trying to close that loop. And how do you design your tooling, your processes, the way that you measure it, and put that back into design and feed that back in. So again, when we came into the world of automation, I kind of went from this world of metrology to automated metrology to robotics, accurate robotics, to the position where I am now. It was the same thing, is looking at how products are designed in those early stages and then trying to translate that into a manufacturing process. So it's kind of like this DFX, which used to be quite popular a couple of decades ago, which kind of fell off the radar a little bit, but I'm trying to bring it back in again. But those are the challenges that we see now. Within the aerospace industry, it's heavily regulated. Lots of certification of processes are required. So to try and make changes to existing processes or designs is very, very challenging. So to be able to get automation right and to do it most cost effectively, to be able to compete, like Roger was just saying, it needs to happen really at the design phase. And that in aerospace, that doesn't come around all that often. The design, because a new aircraft doesn't necessarily come to market so frequently. But we're in a period right now where that is the case with this advanced air mobility shift that we're seeing. So there's a real opportunity at the moment to introduce design for automation, design for verification, and working with designers to enable them and educate them on how to design something so that we can cost effectively automate something. So there's a lot of design handbooks, design guidelines, which are typically used within the aerospace industry, and they're like Bibles within the aerospace, and they're kind of locked down to using those. So developing techniques and processes around design for automation to be able to sit in those so that it's done at that early stage, so that you can cost effectively impact your automated solution is the thing that I'm really trying to drive at the moment. We find that small little impacts, like little features here and there, can have a massive impact on your manufacturing solution. So within this design for automation area that we're kind of looking at design for automation for the product, but also design for automation for the process. As you slightly change your process, you can slightly modify your product in order to achieve a certain process. So having very small changes here, your tolerance or little features, can open up new pathways for automation that designers might not necessarily be inherently knowledgeable about. So it's just really that education piece on how do we bring automation engineers into those design discussions and move towards that cost-effective solution.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Andy. Design perspective. Right, so you've heard from 3 of our 5 panelists. Some questions are starting to come through. As questions start to come to mind, please use the QR codes and send the questions in, and we will answer as many as we can in this session. I've got no doubt it will be a lively discussion. But let me move on to Tom, so from a BAE Systems and the Tom perspective.
So good afternoon everyone, thank you for coming. So I've been in BAE, so Submarines Division, for 4 months now, so relatively new there. And my comments will resonate with what's already been said. So recent announcements, global events, the demand on production capacity at BAE is ever increasing. And we have the perfect opportunity now to change the way that we do things. BAE is somewhat unique in that we don't exactly have a product range, and we don't have a kind of competitive market, so to speak, but we are in competition with the rest of the UK. We talk about aerospace programs as new products being developed. In the realm of nuclear, we've got SMR programs coming on board, we've got large-scale nuclear developments in the UK. All that is a constraint on resource, and it's the same resource, it's the same design for automation, design for manufacturing resource, but we're going through this massive product development cycle, upscale in manufacturing capacity, capability, all that demand on the people in Barrow for us are being pulled all around the country in different programs, and the only way we're going to meet demand is by getting more out of the same number of people or more out of less people. And the way to do that is to use the modern day tools, innovation and technology to achieve that. And in the manufacturing space, that is automation. It's using technology to be able to not just get more production capacity, but keep people safe, keep people working with the right skills, keep people working in a manner that is good for the people and good for the business. So I'm in this space currently, BAE's in this space currently, where we have a huge opportunity to make these changes. We're not starting from a blank sheet. We've got 100 years, 150 years maybe of experience of building submarines, but how we build them tomorrow will be different to how we build them today. And not only BAE can't go and speak to competitors, the handful of people who build submarines globally and find out how they do it best. It doesn't happen. But we can share collaboration with the industries in the UK that we have. BAE do a whole lot of welding, probably one of the biggest welders in the country, but we're not the only one. Similarly, you've got one product or a handful of products in aerospace, high value, long lead times, you're not designing new products every day. We're in a similar position. How do we learn those lessons? How do we share those lessons? And I think as the large OEM businesses, we need to work with supply chain and help build that core capability within the supply chain in the UK to support these businesses across multi-industries. And then once we've got that capability, we're still touching on the same challenges we heard this morning. The fear of failure, the people side of life, the culture change. How do we successfully implement automation so that it's a benefit to everyone involved in that supply chain? It's not about replacing jobs, it's about increase the capacity of UK PLC and what we can deliver and export globally in a manner that everyone is more productive, everyone is in a better place, and it's beneficial to every part of that supply chain.
Excellent, thank you. And then, not least, Tony, your opening perspective, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think it comes as no surprise that my interest in this is around the people element of it. In the 27 years that I've been doing this job, I think it's one of the greatest jobs because I'm a bit of a manufacturing anorak, so I actually get to go into factories all the time. I'm probably one of the few people who actually likes the smell of coolant. If I can smell coolant, I know something's being made, so that's a happy day for me. I think one of the challenges that we have had through this journey, and I would say from a Unite point of view, is often that perspective that we're blockers to new technology. Nothing could be further from the truth. From day one, there are companies like Rolls-Royce, GKN, BAE, a number of others that are highly unionised and probably wouldn't be where they were today if they weren't unionised because of some of the things that we bring to the party. Now, some of that can be seen as challenging. I was, for example, in this very room at the Midlands Aerospace Conference about 18 months ago, and they'd got a photographer and I asked him to take a photograph of the audience. Somebody came up to me and said, why are you asking for that picture to be taken? I said, because I've not seen a room that has been so white and so male for such a long time. Now, when we talk, and that's part of the challenge that we have to bring to this, we have to challenge companies to say, you talk about a shortage of labour, you talk about a challenge in finding people with the right skills, and you're only actually hitting very small proportions of the population. So those are some of the challenges that I think that we bring. It's also those challenges when things are being introduced, and I've had some really good conversations today and listened in on other conversations, and it's always been around that development and looking at how you increase productivity. As long as you're increasing productivity, as long as you're chasing the market and expanding, then you're not going to have an issue with us. I think one of the other key challenges is, again, and it's a bit of a diversity issue, is how do we get more people from, whether it's mental disabilities or physical disabilities, into the workplace? Because as we move out of the workplace, those physical hazardous jobs, that should make work more accessible to more people across the piece. So there's understandably at something like this, there's a lot of focus on the technology, but I would challenge you, if you like, or ask you to consider is, work is for a purpose. It's not just to make companies successful, is it? It's to feed and build society. So how do we make sure that while we're doing this, society benefits from that across the board as well?
Excellent, thank you. And thank you to all 5 of our panellists. Incidentally, if you look at the pictures and names above, and then look down to the actual people, you'll find that things aren't quite the same. But we're not messing with your heads. It's just
that's
the
my fault.
vagaries of how we've seated ourselves today. Anyway, thank you very much for the questions that are coming through. Again, please use the QR code, send the questions in. We already have a healthy crop of questions, and we will start with one which has been written for, who is this? This is for Roger, this first one. Not the first question, but one I'm picking out particularly. Roger raised excellent points which match our experiences. I'm not sure who our is, perhaps they were, oh yes, there's our. Roger raised excellent points which matched our experiences. What is the USA doing differently, and what can we learn from them? Would you like to?
I think there is a cultural dimension to it. They just do it. They're less scared of failure. It's more common when I'm dealing with friends, partners in the States. They've gone through a bankruptcy or some issue like that, and it's almost like a badge of honour as they're going through their business development. What we're seeing at the moment, and that's a change in government, or certainly Innovate UK policy, is dual use technology. So the biggest growth area in the States at the moment is in defence. And there you take away some of the challenges the guys have mentioned on certification and so on. If it's a pilotless drone, people are not so worried about the number of tests you have to do. They just want to get it out there. So some of it's cultural. I think from a scale-up startup thing, things are improving here. We had an investment from Mercer, and I know you guys have had investment as well. It used to be said that if you want to get to the next level of funding, you have to go to the States, because you can get tens of millions of seed funding. It's not available for a robot company in the UK. But I think that is starting to change. So I don't think we have to get up and go anywhere. But yeah, I'd be interested with the other guys, because I know that Airbus, GKN and BAE will have military sides of it, and maybe that's a pathway through to accelerating some of this technology into factories as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. You raised the question of fear of failure as being a cultural differentiator between the UK and the US. The very first question that came in addresses exactly that point, but it could be, I could offer it to anyone who wants to pick this one up. Can you share a specific challenge or failure during an automation journey you have taken or witnessed, and what key lesson emerged from that experience?
I don't want to hog it, but I've got a good story. When I was a very young man, I was made project manager at ABB Robotics for a brand new robot, a brand new process. And this was for interior seam sealing of vehicles. And it was going into Ford Cologne, so it was exciting, young man going abroad and so on. We found so many things pre-delivery. So the most obvious was somebody had missed off a 0 on the floor strength to bolt a robot down. So we had to design a complete metallic raft, huge, that fitted to the factory floor because it was on like a trampoline, a mezzanine floor in a paint shop. We took the roof off the paint shop. What I'm saying is we went to the nth degree on everything. And during the pre-delivery trials, we had seam sealing tests with like a 30-litre bucket of sealant. And then when we got into the factory, it was a 1,000-litre bucket. And for those who may not know, this is quite abrasive material. And so when we switched the robot on to spray sealant, it was like throwing milk at a car. That experience just shows that black swan thing, that no matter how conscientious you are, when you're dealing with state-of-the-art robotics, there's usually something that comes out and blindsides you, but it can be fixed. So we put in these huge temperature conditioners to lower the temperature of the sealant before the robots, and it was adopted by Ford as a global standard afterwards. But yeah, that would be my lesson, that no matter what you do, something's still going to bite you, but it doesn't stop you trying to find everything you can before it gets into production.
Okay, having heard Roger's example, does anyone else want to pick up? Yeah, Marco.
I do have one. Well,
I think that most of our issues in the company have been related to the way Airbus had been favoring management over engineering for the longest time. And so when these two groups clash on a company that has the population of a small city, then this is where details fall through the cracks. And then you end up with something that you wanted to do, something that will be applied, you could apply to multiple areas of the business, perhaps in multiple plants, and you end up taking requirements from everybody, but what you get at the end is a monster that has the requirements from everybody, but nobody wants it, because it doesn't quite apply to the application or to the area that a specific person wanted it to be installed in. And so this has happened multiple times. We've had many of these failures. Collaborative robots has been a difficult thing to implement. I think I could probably safely say that we've spent millions in trying to implement one in production, and that has not worked. For multiple reasons. It's not just the robot's fault. I mean, the robots themselves, that kind of robot is too small for the kind of component that we have. So these are not designed for accuracy. Therefore, we need to put these things on AGVs, on other axes, and that just makes a mess out of the errors that you can get out of that. But on top of it is the fact that when you add the requirements from everybody, and you add the safety, and you have the certification you need to have for all the parts, then you end up with something that doesn't fit anywhere. Even though you took the trouble of going to every single plant, and we have 30 of those just to get more requirements on how to do it, it just did not work. And so, yeah, can be a nightmare.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I mean, I could carry on asking that same question for other members of the panel, but we have other questions to get through. So, if you've been sort of quaking, thinking I don't want to admit to a failure, then you can relax at this point. But I'm going to stay with Marco, because this next question was specifically addressed to you. It's very specific as well. So, question to Marco: how far is the circular economy for aircraft recycling adopting robotics?
Ooh, that's tricky. So we are. I think it's safe to say that our current product, the thing that is flying today, is not designed to be disassembled yet. It wasn't designed for disassembly. It's actually the design drawings of the A320 are on paper, literally on paper, which it makes it far more difficult for us to automate anything, because there's no CAD drawing that you can give somebody to actually do any sort of work. So The product is supposed to last for 25, 30 years, so we're going to start seeing more airlines trying to upgrade their aircraft, and we're going to have to find a way to disassemble them and bring them back into some sort of use. A lot of the material cannot be recycled. We've been talking about recycling carbon fiber, recycling some metallic parts, but that's not, at the moment, I wouldn't say it's sustainable. Maybe my managers would think differently, but I just don't see that happening yet. However, it's been made public that we are already thinking about the next product whenever that gets launched. That is being designed with that in mind. So I'm not able to speak any further about that though, but it is being designed with that sort of thing in mind.
Okay, well I hope that's an answer that's kind of will strike a chord with the person who asked the question. Right, I'm going to ask a couple of questions that anyone can pick up, and maybe we'll move to a couple of people for this. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to start with Tony with this question, if I may, but then also open out to our other colleagues here. So what are the considerations that you believe are important regarding workforce transformation and employee engagement while adopting automation and robotics?
I think the first thing is don't make it a surprise. I think history's taught me that no different to dealing with things with your children, is it? If you go straight and tell your kids something, their automatic response is no. I think it's a natural humour, especially if you're British. I think in other countries it may be slightly different, but I think in the UK it generally tends to be no. So it's about engaging in a proper discussion, and certainly having been both on the receiving end of this and then personally while I worked in the workplace, and then having to try and manage a change process, if you like, from an employee point of view. That's absolutely, whenever somebody the job I used to work on was on instrumentation, and I used to hate it because we'd get people coming in suits and they'd just walk into our shop while we were having our lunch and start measuring things. And you just knew you were on the move, and they wouldn't tell us where, when, how, and automatically we'd go, right, we better dig out that list of 101 reasons why we didn't ought to move, even if where we were being moved to was better than where we were today. And I think that kind of sums it up, that if you talk and engage properly, and if there are trade unions in there, don't make that assumption that they're going to be against you. Clearly, they have a responsibility to look after their members' interests. So they're not just going to automatically say yes. They are going to, and they are going to likely be aware, because we will have trained them, of what some of the challenges around the change processes are, and what some of the benefits that they should be able to negotiate as a consequence of change. So it's not being negative, and if you look at it and you go, actually, if you've got a trade union in there, they're probably your greatest asset in terms of making that move. And it was interesting in terms of, and I say those people in there, because I've sat on the Cobotics committee with Mike, and they put up a chart, they've done a bit of work, and then identified internal pressures and external pressures, and they got the trade union in the external pressure. And I had to make the point to them that actually that's in the wrong box. Trade unions are the internal player, not an external. There'll be people like me that come and support them, but the internal players have probably been there longer than most of the management. If you look at most senior management in companies now, they last about 5 or 6 years. Workers, especially in manufacturing, tend to last about 20, 30 years. So who's actually got the greater invested interest in that change working and being successful, and the company being successful? The manager who's going to move to another company in 5 years? Or the person like me who sticks there for 17 or 20 or 25 years?
Good, very good points. Thank you, Tony. Your example of the men in suits coming in, measuring up, it reminded me of an acronym I came across. Probably also sort of links to the kind of the nature of sort of British bloody-mindedness as well. The acronym comes from the gas industry, which is BOHECA, which stood for Bend Over, Here It Comes Again. Anyway, on this same question of what's important for workforce transformation through during the adoption of robotics and automation, does anyone else want to pick that point up at all?
Yeah, I can add some to that. So yeah. I think one of the key parts of the engagement is not just bringing the people along the journey, but they're generally the people that know the process the best. Humans are absolutely fantastic at not realising at what they're actually doing. especially when you get to skilled manufacturing operators. They're doing stuff that they don't even realise they're doing. So coming back to defining requirements, if you don't speak to the people doing the job and bring them along the journey of what's happening at the end of it, you will get something that doesn't meet the process that's happening if you've not engaged. So the engagement isn't just about bringing the people along because you want them to be supportive of it. They also hold the knowledge of what we're trying to automate. And it's not necessarily about completely replicating what happens today, but it also speaks back to the design side that Andy touched on of design for automation. How do we change what we're doing today to be better for automation tomorrow, that the operators get the output that they want that's beneficial to them and ultimately delivers a safe quality manufacturing process?
Yeah, I was going to say the same way as well. Understanding requirements, isn't it, from the operators who know the job inside and out, and being able to take them along that journey. We did this not too long ago. It's quite a complex task that nobody really liked doing, so they were really up for automating it. So we worked alongside them, learned everything from this process, got all those requirements, we could build it into that automation solution. But before we did that, whilst we worked them, we then developed a VR environment as well, took it down to site, set it up in the area that the automation was going to be installed, and they could then do the process that they were now going to be doing in terms of running robotics. And it was really nice. It was a fun way because they could throw things around inside this environment and catch it and whatnot. But it was a fun way of just learning what it was moving to, but also being able to assess what was going to happen and see whether they thought the requirements could be met as well through this new process. So yeah, making it fun and taking them on the journey was kind of the key thing for us.
Okay, thank you. Andy, I'm going to stay with you for this next question, but again, I'll open it out to others afterwards. You may actually want to challenge the underlying assumption of the question, or you may not. It's quite simple. Okay. What can we do to shift designers to consider automation?
Yes, it's got to be embedded in the process. So most companies will have their a set of gates that they need to go through in terms of design practices. So if you want to embed something in there, it has to be part of that process and signed off right at the kind of the CTO level. So that's what we're doing is we're making certain requirements, certain process flows part of that gate process to ensure that it is followed because things are so heavily regulated and process driven in aerospace. You know, things have to be done very very strictly. So adding something in once it's all been signed off and approved it's not too much of a challenge. It's not necessarily having to convince the designer once it's part of that process. It's just guiding them through that. So.
Okay, good, thank you. Anyone else want to have any interest in that particular question? No reason why you should or not. If not, I've got plenty of other questions, so I can move on. Okay, thank you, and thank you whoever asked that question. Okay, let's go for a big theme now. I'm not sure how you will approach this. What is the cutting edge of industrial automation? I'm not sure where the way in is for that question, but Tom,
I can start with that. Not what we're doing today.
Not what we're doing today.
In short, I think appropriate automation is actually where we need to look. It's not just about being cutting edge for the sake of cutting edge. So again, coming back to requirements, why are we doing it? And what is the appropriate automation is really key. There is always, in some form of automation, in some businesses, there is always going to be something that's considered cutting edge but is not appropriate elsewhere. And I think that's really important to recognise. Taking submarine building as a industry, we generally do one of everything every few years. No one in the right mind would say you would automate that. But then when you look back at it, we're doing the same or a similar weld 2, 3, 5 times a day. We're doing the same cutting operations. So we're not looking at automating submarine manufacturing. We're looking at automating the piecemeal parts that make it and those repeatable processes where automation starts to make more sense and is more appropriate. And it's that. I'd rather be cutting edge in one element where it's appropriate and right rather than trying to change the whole site-wide in one fell swoop to go to AI because that's the latest buzzword. It's got to be appropriate for what we're doing, not cutting edge because you've seen a nice YouTube clip of it, so it must work for everything. It's just not. It's not the reality of engineering.
Okay, thank you. Good answer. Anyone else want to pick this one up? Yeah. So, Roger.
I think it's information. I think that's been transformative in manufacturing. So I remember at the start of my career, we used to do robot layouts by doing a cardboard cutout of a model of a robot and just putting drawing pins through it and saying that's axis 2 and 3, and that's what it will reach. And yeah, many, many examples along the way, but quite often when you get in the mire doing a commissioning on a job, it's because there was something you didn't know. And I think the evolution of these PLM systems and CAD systems, information, and that will be linked more and more with AI. I think that is transformative.
Okay, good. Anyone else? Or I shall. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think over the last couple of decades, where there's been some pretty high-profile failures within aerospace, at least in terms of automation, it's usually because the tools that are being used are from, say, the automotive industry or other, and we're trying to get them to work within aerospace. And it's a completely different ballgame. It's different rates, different tolerances, different requirements. So trying to get certain tools to try and work within aerospace has quite drastically failed in very high-profile cases. But over the last couple of years, there's been a shift in that region, and we've seen new technology coming out which is more fit for aerospace, which I'm super excited about, because the tools that are being produced by certain manufacturers now are fit for aerospace, and I think we're going to see that step change shift to something more akin to automotive, because we've now got the right tools to use. So,
good, thank you. Yes, so.
Can I stay on that topic? So I think that the cutting edge, the perception was cutting edge is definitely being, I don't know, guided by the media perhaps. You go see YouTube a video of a humanoid robot, and you would think that that's cutting edge. And as a purely roboticist, I think they're super cool. The thing that outside is very cool to see. You know, it's a feat of engineering to have something like that. Can't use them. Really, I mean, I'm being honest here, I cannot use them. I don't have a use case for this. I still don't see a use case for this. And I would argue that the humanoid, there's so much hype about humanoids today that it's like the autonomous cars 10 years ago.
Yep.
Right, 10 years ago, every single CEO of any major car company would say, oh, you're going to have autonomous cars in 2 years, and then 3 years, and then by 2020. And all this year came in and went by, and nothing really happened. Because the infrastructure around this, it just didn't work. And I don't see that working yet, at least now for us. So back to Andy's point, I mean, I think that making sure that we work with our partners and we create the tools that we can use in our production. I can cite, for example, we've been working with FunUp for the last few years, and we created a robot with them that is now part of their lineup. To me, that's a cutting edge development, because now you can reuse that technology or that development into other industries, and that's what they've been doing also. And so to me, that's more important. It's not visible to the common person that goes to YouTube and watch and sees a video or something, but this is where the cutting edge is happening today.
Okay, so it's a perfect segue into the next question. I just want to say though, but quick compliment to the audience. You're asking some good questions. Thank you very much for this. You're throwing some grits into the oyster of our panel and producing a few pearls here. So well done for that. But the neat segue into the next question. And I think, Monica, you've probably already given the answer to this particular question, although you didn't know it at the time, so I'll open it out. What are your views on general-purpose humanoid robots versus task-specific traditional robots?
Right, so maybe let me say one more thing and probably go to the guys. But I think that, again, they're very cool. As a roboticist, 20 years ago, you put humanoid in your proposal and you're getting the money. Because really, this is something cool to develop. It's good technology. It's sexy. It's a sexy part of our robotics. Let's not get that twisted here. However, for an actual application, I think it's very pretentious for humans to say that the human form is the best thing that we can use for an application. Why? Because today we know that we have machines that can develop things very quickly. It can produce millions of those things that they're developing, and they don't look like a human. A great example of this is well, fair enough, the robot cars, right? So we don't make a human to drive a car. We make the car into a robot. And so we will start seeing, my prediction is that we will start seeing more and more of this as opposed to humanoids taking over big machinery or some of these jobs. Or I'm not. I mean, this is the future. This will come at some point. I just don't see it happen. And in my home, I just really don't see it happening, because if you want a humanoid to be any useful, you need it to pick up. It's just a simple system engineering problem, right? So you need a humanoid to do the sort of task at home that you would do, which means that that humanoid need to be able to carry some weight, which means that if it has to carry some weight, it has to carry some big actuators. If it has big actuators, it needs to carry a big battery. If it has a big battery, what happens when there's a catastrophic failure and this thing falls onto your kid or your dog or your base that was very expensive when you went to China? I don't know. So that sort of thing is again, infrastructure around what needs to happen, who's liable for this, that is still not being, it's not part of the conversation. What's part of the conversation is, can we bring down the cost of a humanoid to $20,000 as a rental? And that may or may not be possible. I just don't see how the insurance will work around that. So again, it's not a technology problem.
Okay, good, thank you. So, yes, so Tom.
I'd agree with what Marco's saying in that it's really cool technology, but what's the why? Why are we doing it? And I actually think the development of humanoid robotics is brilliant, and what it spins out of it will be the cutting edge technology in manufacturing. I don't think you'll ever see a facility full of humanoid robots because, as you say, the human isn't the perfect form for manufacturing jobs in a lot of instances. It's like saying your auto self-driving car should be a humanoid sat in the driver's seat, and I don't think anyone would suggest that's the right thing to do. So it's that level of the technology development is important, and it's a great form to develop that technology, but it's what will spin out of that technology development that we can adopt into manufacturing is more important and interesting to me than a humanoid form and function that I've got that in a human. And actually trying to automate the things humans are good at is probably not the right direction. Humans have a lot of incredible skills that are really difficult to replicate. It's the monotonous, boring, hazardous tasks that we want to get humans away from.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Anybody else on this question before we move on? Okay, I'll move on then. We've still got quite a few varied questions that are coming in. Here's an interesting one with a clear UK perspective. Looking forward, what are the key steps to build UK capacity in automation for advanced manufacturing? Big, broad question there.
Yeah. I think education's a key piece, but also figuring out, first of all, where do we fit on the global market in the UK, and what is our ID, our fingerprint? Because it's not necessarily that we're going to be competing with China in terms of en masse production. We've typically been, as a nation, within that kind of niche, high-value space. So in terms of the education side of things, we found that a lot of the students that are coming out of universities don't necessarily have the industrial automation skills that we need. So that's been a challenge, but the way we've got around it is we've actually been working on developing our own training cells. So we've built a robotic automation training cell within one of our facilities, which we're looking at replicating. So we rolled that out last year. And we're bringing the fresh graduates are going through this automation style. They're learning how to do PLC programming, NC programming, how to just generally use a robot with a pendant. And it's been really exciting seeing these youngsters come in and learn these specific skills specific to industry, which are then useful to us that we can then go and start deploying solutions on the shop floor. The other thing is how we're upskilling people on the sites. So where they've been working doing manual jobs for many years and have a lot of skills on how to make products, we can then bring them into this same training cell and show them that robots are not scary, and show them how to use them, and show really that the parallel between using, say, CNC machines and robotics as well. Because if you do robotics correctly, then you should see that the two should be married, and no matter what the manipulator is at the end of the control system, whether that's a cutter or a pick and place end effector, effectively you're still controlling a machine, and it's trying to break down those barriers with our staff that we have in terms of barriers to automation, which is generally fear-related for existing shop floor staff. So.
Very good, thank you, Andy. I think, Tony, you want to come in on this one?
Just a couple of observations. I wonder, going around a lot of SMEs in particular, whether there's potentially a generational thing there, that there's a lot of people of a certain age running these companies, and they've gone through a lot of very difficult years, and they're more concerned about surviving as they are rather than expanding, and whether it needs the next generation to come through and be given the confidence, hopefully with the change of a manufacturing strategy and actually a government that says, we want you to be successful and we want you to grow. I think the other element that needs looking at is around the lifelong learning agenda, which encouraged people to learn, and not necessarily technically specific topics, but just get back into a learning state, so that they could go to a college, or they could even, we set up, like most of your companies probably, we had learning centres set up where people could go and learn about anything. But again, what it does, it gets those educational juices flowing, so that people are, again, what we found, were more open to change if they were carrying on with their education, because I think the older you get, it can be more difficult. And even when you're asked to learn something that you relearn something that you knew, very often that can feel quite challenging, and you can become quite fearful. So I think anything that we can do around those areas, but a key bit I think is the fact that we've now got a government that actually wants manufacturing to be successful. Hopefully that starts to feed through right through the process and gives people encouragement.
Good. Thank you. I'll move on to the next question. I think there's probably a neat link here. Relating back to Greg Clark's keynote earlier this afternoon, Greg Clark quoted Haldane's, quote, long tail of low productivity. How do we fix that long tail and get the whole supply chain up to the best possible productivity? Any thoughts on that? Yeah, Marco?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about what Mr. Clark mentioned. I think that this is one of those things that, again, this is my opinion on this, and I don't mean to get political, but this is one of those things that he mentioned, that sometimes, even within government, one department is pointing one direction and another one is pointing another one. I think what we're hearing is, the government wants the UK to be better at manufacturing, but the people that can enable this through education probably don't have the same view. And I say this because I teach at master students and guide PhD students here in universities, and anecdotally, if we get 30 students, only one person is from the UK. Everybody else is from somewhere else around the world. If we're lucky, we get one person from the UK.
Wow.
And so either we encourage more people in the UK to get advanced degrees in technical knowledge, but clearly we cannot prevent the other 29 from coming here, and the white paper on immigration is, to me, is a disaster. But it comes from me, who I'm also I'm immigrant, so I don't mean to get political about that. I know there's reasons for this, so I don't want to open a debate on that. But clearly we need the help. I live here, and I do aspire to become a citizen at some point. But I think that this country needs the help from people coming from outside too. So thinking that it can do it on its own, it's a very centric kind of Trumpist, way of seeing things at this point. The other point, one last thing. The other point and I'm saying this because, at least for aerospace, the challenge we have ahead of us is that in a few years' time, we're going to be launching a new program, and Boeing will do the same thing. The supply chain today cannot cope with two companies of this size putting billions into manufacturing and production of design of a new aircraft. When this happens, then the supply chain they will split. Either will go to Boeing or they will come to Airbus. And specifically for the UK, we're not ready for that, because most of the big players, big integrators, are not here. They are in Spain, they're in France, they're in Germany, and so when those companies stay on their own turf to help the local plants, even within Airbus, who are we going to go to for help here in the UK? And so this is how we need to develop a supply chain as well, by encouraging people to get educated on this stuff. so that we can then use them and hire them.
Thank you for that, Marco. When I looked at the clock when we started this, we had 45 minutes for this discussion. We now have about 5 minutes, so it's amazing how time goes. So thank you for our panellists and to our audience. We've got time just to explore the rest of this question with other panellists and maybe one other topic. So does anyone else want to pick that one up? Yeah, Roger.
I'm an optimist by nature. When we're talking about improving that tail, I think we do actually now have a nice opportunity. So one of the companies we did a bid for, they were in the Dudley, so they're sort of a very industrial labour, manual labour area. And they came and asked us originally about a cobot because 2019 they had one team of operators that were all from Poland, and because of Brexit they all went home. And then early 2020 we had COVID and the other group of operators were all sacked. And then when we had the first opening up again and they went back to all the guys that they let go, they went, no, we're not coming back. You've treated us awfully. And this, I think the way you treat your staff is a key thing in trying to build things up. But we also have this issue, and it's not just within the UK, of skills shortages and a big thing on migration. Yes, we do need migration, but how can we fill that gap? And I think automation is a pretty obvious way to go.
Okay, Tony.
Just a very quick observation on that. I think one of the big, and there's a challenge there to the prime companies, is that when I became an apprentice back in 1979, yes, it's that long ago, but the company took on something like 500-600 apprentices. And they didn't do that because they needed 500-600 apprentices. They did that because they knew the supply chain needed that. Now, there's not many primes. Hopefully some of you are going to challenge me and say we are doing that now. But for a long time, they weren't doing that and they stopped doing that. And that's something they've got to recognise. Instead of complaining, Rolls-Royce in Derby is a classic example. They took on, I think it was about 150 apprentices. Every year, and people say people aren't interested in getting in. Well, I can tell you that side of Derby City shuts down when they have their open day. They have a training school and there's 4,000 people trying to get in that building. So don't tell me there's a shortage. They're just not being taken and they're not being used.
Good point. Thank you. Okay, right. We've got under 3 minutes. One last question, probably with sort of like one, 2 line answers, if anyone wants to answer the question. Right, so with the adoption of robots, the consequent problem that needs to be acknowledged is their end of life. So what are the panellists' thoughts about repurposing the retired or decommissioned robots that end up in landfills? This sounds like a sort of scenario from a science fiction film that I've seen. Yes, so Roger.
It's a complete non-question. I think what you find in all advanced automation, not just robots, is the things that go out quickest are your PC, your IT, your software. So there will be much more on that side of it than the actual gearboxes and metal of the robots. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. There are robots in Ford that have been going for 20 years. You know, it's not really a serious issue at the moment. It's more an issue about people buying robots and automating than worrying about why not to automate future down the line.
Okay. Anyone else?
There's a dude upstairs with a cool video about how you do that.
Oh, right, okay.
It is from China, mind, but there's a downside. All the machines made in China as well, which is a different issue, I guess.
Okay. Right, any final thoughts on that topic, or anything else that has been unsaid and could be said? Okay, well in that case I'm going to give everyone 1 minute of their life back in that case. So thank you very much to our panellists, to Tony, Tom, Andy, Roger and Marco. And thank you all to you as well, much appreciated.